Welcome to Earth Grief Doula. I'm Susan Meeker-Lowry. One of the things I talk about a lot, if you know me, is magic. What do I mean by that? When I was a little girl, I remember going to my mother. I must have been about 11. And I asked her, I said, "Mommy, when will the magic come back?" And she looked at me. She didn't know what I meant. She had no clue. I didn't really know what I meant either. I didn't have the words for it. But I said, "I don't know." I said, "Nothing feels the same." And what I was experiencing was, as a child, I spent most of my time in the woods. There was a woods behind our house, and there was a brook back there. And the woods were mostly tall white pines, and they sheltered lady slippers and trillium and mayflowers and what I called wild lily of the valley and jack in the pulpits and violets and so many friends. And there was a swampy area where we would dig night crawlers and worms to go fishing. And the brook down back, I knew like the back of my hand. I can still see all the different stepping stones, and I knew which ones were safe to step on and which ones weren't. Some were slippery and some would, wiggle a little bit. And if you weren't careful, they would just knock you over. And this was where I lived, basically. And I experienced this place and the trees and the plants and all the different creatures. They were part of my life. They were friends. I knew that they weren't the same as my human friends, but they were alive and they were a part of my life. And they were, and I didn't feel a huge difference. I didn't think, oh, well, they're not alive and I am, or there was no separation. And so everything felt magical and enchanted. And when I went to my mother, what was happening at that point was some of that magic was just, it was almost like I was pretending. I was pretending like like making believe, like when we talk about children playing make believe. Well, yeah, that's how it looks to us. But when we're a kid, it's not making believe, it's real. And that's what I was missing. I missed that knowing of real. It was like the older I got, the less real that became, and the more desperate I became to try to recreate it and to bring that feeling back into me. And when I couldn't, I went to my mother. And the only thing she could say to me was, well, she said, for me, she said, it became, when I met your father, obviously that was magical because they fell in love. And then, of course, the real magic when she had me. I was the first and then my sister. And I looked at her and I'm like, I don't want to wait that long. I mean, I was 11 years old. And she didn't really know what I was talking about, and really neither did I. And but that's what I meant. It was like that magic. That's what magic is, and to me. And as I got older, it started to come back in a different way. Thanks in many ways to my grandmother, my father's mother, Nanny Meeker, who moved to live in a cottage on our property when I was about that age. And Nanny was a really awesome person and was very much interested in things like reincarnation. And, her idea of God was God is love. I mean, and I was raised a Catholic, so that was her perspective on things was a lot different than what the nuns were teaching me. And so Nanny opened me up to a whole different world of how to look at life. And at the same time, I was old enough to begin riding my bike on my own to different places by the river, and Diana's Bath, which is a place where I grew up that is like waterfalls and smooth granite rocks and potholes created by thousands of years of the water just flowing over them and creating like deep holes. And it's just an amazing place. And I used to ride my bike there and hang out. And after a time, That magic, that connection that I felt as a child with everything in the world, with nature, came back. Different, obviously, because now I was aware of it. I had words for it. I wrote poetry about it. And then one night, when I was with friends, we were going to spend the night at Lower Falls on the Swift River. I was like, maybe I was a senior in high school. And I just decided to get away from my friends for a while. And I walked down a little bit and I found this tree that was shaped, that had a branch that was shaped like a seat. And so I went and I got on that branch and I was just like laying there on the branch. And I could hear the river that was full of snow melt and hear my friends in the distance and, see the flames from the fire that they had started. And all of a sudden, whoosh, I was gone. I was literally, as trite as it seems, I was literally one. There was no me. It was just all. And it changed my life. And that experience, ever since I've lived with that sense of enchantment. I mean, not every moment. Sometimes, I have to like think about it, make it conscious. But when I talk about magic, what I'm talking about is the life force that is in every single living being that shares earth with us. And that life force is how we connect through the heart, not through the head, through the heart. And when you open up your eyes in a different way and your ears in a different way and in a softer way, perhaps, you become aware of a mutuality. Like the quote that I read in the solstice episode, that Stephen Herod Burner, where he said, not only are we held, do we hold, do we see and participate with this, like in the case of his quote, with a huge glacial erratic or an ancient tree, but we are beheld. It is a mutual thing. It is, as he said, it's not a river that flows in one direction. It goes in both directions. It's me and the tree, back and forth. And that is the enchantment. That is the magic. Those are the words I use to describe that relationship and that reality. And once we allow that awareness into our hearts, to the point where we decide that we want it to be in our lives all the time, everything changes. Now, for me, even though I was aware of it all the time, it felt impossible to walk within that awareness all the time, because there's so much in our lives, and especially as a single mother, as somebody who is always busy, going to meetings, organizing conferences, traveling, speaking, all that stuff. And then even later, it's like our daily lives just get so hectic. But now that I'm older and my time is pretty much my own and the work that I do is chosen and very much self-directed, I am able to more successfully, thankfully, walk in the world with that awareness. Whether I'm walking down the street or whether I'm walking in the woods or whether I'm even driving in the car, there's actually an awareness of everyone being alive, everyone having not thoughts per se, because that's a human thing, but everybody perceiving. It's there, it's real. And to me, it's what makes life worth living. And to me, also living within that awareness and becoming open to it, making efforts every day to bring it in more. That is essential for knowing what we need to do to heal Earth, to bring about the transformation, the paradigm shift that we must work to bring about. I feel that that's the role of the whole grief thing, to wake us up, to crack open our hearts so that we can be strong for Earth as warriors, because that is what Earth needs now. We're living in the time of the prophecies. We are living in a time when our actions, what we do or don't do, is going to determine whether our children and grandchildren and great-great-great-grandchildren have the opportunity to experience life in any way, shape, or form. That is kind of on us right now. In the past, people have thought, oh, the world is coming to an end. And whenever I would talk to people about how bad things would be, like a few years ago or whatever, they would say, oh, well, everybody always thinks that, they're living in the worst times and things are all going to hell. And I would be like, well, yeah, that's true. But the big difference between where we are right now in 2023 and where we were, or thought we were anyway, in 1959 or 1823 or wherever it was, at that point in time, Earth was not endangered to the point that she is now. We have so overtaken Earth, so compromised Earth's ecosystems, that there is no guarantee that Earth is going to be able to continue to support life as we've come to know it. And that is the reality. And that is a huge grief. That is something that has to be faced. And for many, many decades, I was unwilling to face it. I was like, oh, no. We can actually do this. I believe we can do this. I'm not saying we can't. I'm not saying, nope, forget it. Now we just have to prepare for funerals. No, what I'm saying is we can do it. I don't know that we will. But if we're going to do it, now is the time. And this grief that we're feeling, that's coming at us from all sides, not just our own personal losses, but how we're feeling about what's happening to the world politically, how we feel about what's happening to Earth ecologically, how we feel about our cultures, such as they are, and the cultures of Native people, Indigenous people, tribals people being destroyed while they struggle to reclaim them and remember and keep their languages alive. Absolutely essential. Just as a diversity of plant and animal lives is important for the health of ecosystems, a diversity of human cultures and languages is essential for all of it too. And never before have we lived in a time where those possibilities were not happening, but we do now. That is where we're at. And that's what's at stake. This is huge. So the grief we're going to feel is huge. And the love that we feel is huge. And there's power in it. And I'm hoping that every once in a while, I will have something to share that somehow adds to our wisdom, our knowledge, or will touch something inside of you where you remember, and just, really start to do this work, really start to open and embrace the love and the life, and not question, is this real or not? Because yes, it's real. The relationships that we have with a non-human world, the conversations, however you want to think of it, that we have, those are real. They aren't figments of our imagination. We need to trust that. As our ancestors trusted it before we forgot. before we were driven off of our lands, before our cultures were destroyed way back, those of us who were European. We are all earth-based peoples because we live in earth. And we need to remember who we are and why we're here. And I hope, in a little way, to be a part of that. And I just want to read a quote from Linda Hogan that feels really appropriate for right now, for this time of year as well, and also for this podcast. It's winter, and there is smoke from the fires. The square lighted windows of houses are fogging over. It's a world of elemental attention, of all things working together, listening to what speaks in the blood. Whichever road I follow, I walk in the land of many gods, and they love and eat one another. Walking, I am listening in a deeper way. Suddenly, all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands.